All right, guys. So when I saw that Matt Walsh from Daily Wire was going on Dr. Phil to have the transgenderism debate, bruh, I got super excited. I'm not gonna lie, because I actually listen to Matt Walsh a lot, even though I don't necessarily agree with everything he says. But one thing I respect about the guy is that he does not hold back, right? Even if he, on some things I don't think he's necessarily right, he doesn't hold back, right? And he just says how he feels. And I think part of the reason why he can get away with it is because he's under the Daily Wire, so he has that kind of protection to just kind of say how he feels in a way that's like straight up. But I could not wait to watch this episode because I just saw the preview and who he was actually talking to and having a conversation with, and I knew like it was gonna be fantastic, right? I knew it was gonna be grade A television. Okay, so without further ado, I want to go ahead and get into this clip of Matt Walsh having this gender debate with a transgender / non-binary couple on Dr. Phil.
There should be no construct of gender, just sex. You're either male or female.
Right.
And someone feeling in a mental, emotional way that they don't identify with the sex that they have been biologically created as and assigned at birth based on their genitalia. If they don't feel that way, that there's no construct that describes that, experiences that.
Well, that's got nothing to do with the reality. So you can feel however you want. I mean, I could sit here and say that I feel like a tomato plant, but that doesn't mean that I'm actually in those things. So your self-perception, you can have whatever self-perception you want, but you can't expect me to take part in that self-perception or to take part in this kind of charade, this theatrical production. You don't get your own pronouns, just like you don't get your own prepositions or your own adjectives. It's like if I were to tell you, my adjectives are handsome and brilliant, and whenever you're talking about me, you have to describe me as handsome and brilliant because that's how I identify. It makes no sense. You don't get your own pronouns. That's grammar. That's language.
Yeah, I mean, I think that applies to a whole bunch of different stuff, right? Like, if I'm forced to call you by your pronouns because you feel like you're a woman even though you're a man at birth, then why can I be referred to as whatever noun I want to be referred to, right? So if I want to be referred to as daddy, right, then you got to call me daddy, right? If I want to be referred to as Poppy, then you got to call me that, right? Otherwise, I'm going to get offended, right? I'm just saying, that's essentially the whole argument when it comes to the pronouns thing. You have to use it out of respect and because you don't want to offend that person, okay? That's what the whole argument comes down to. But if you accept that as the premise for why we must comply with somebody's preferred pronouns, then you can extend that to almost anything, right? In reference to how you refer to people, okay? If you don't refer to me the way I want to be referred to, then you're a bigot, right? Again, I mean, that's the argument here. That's the argument.
So you think it's a delusion? Someone is self-delusional?
Yeah, I think it's delusion. It could be mental illness. It could be it's a lot of different things. With children, wow. There's also
you can't say that, right? You can't say that. You can't say it's a mental illness. They classify that as hate speech.
Just a basic confusion that all kids have. Like that's why when you hear a parent say, "Oh, my 4-year-old son came to me and said that I'm a girl now, and so that's what I'm gonna raise him as a girl." No, you're a 4-year-old. I have 4 kids. When a 4-year-old boy comes to you and says, "Oh, I'm a girl," here's a good follow-up question. What is a girl? Ask him what he means by that. What do you mean by girl? And when you ask him that, here's what he'll tell you. He will tell you what he really means is that he wants to do some of the things that girls do, like play with the dollhouse, or he likes the color pink. That's fine. Play with the dollhouse, but you're still a boy.
Facts. I mean, what he's bringing up here is something I talk about a lot on this channel, especially when it comes to these women that identify as non-binary. And they say that, well, I identify as non-binary because, I do things that society traditionally sees as masculine. Okay. And I'm like, No. We already have a term for that. It's called being a tomboy, right? You're a tomboy. You're not non-binary. You're simply a tomboy. You are a biological woman that tends to do things that society traditionally sees as masculine, right? You may play with action figures, okay? You might like, trucks and things that we see as traditionally masculine, right? I mean, that doesn't make you a boy, right? That doesn't make you non-binary. So it just simply means that you're a biological girl that just tends to like things that, are more masculine. It's really that simple. But again, we have this thing where we've made up these terms so that everybody has like some special identity when it's completely unnecessary, in my opinion.
That's a question I would like to throw out to other members of the panel, actually, because just like the 4-year-old can't answer what is a girl. Well, this is one of the problems with this left-wing gender ideology, is that no one who espouses it can even tell you what these words mean. Like, what is a woman?
Well,
can you tell me what a woman is?
No, I can't.
Bruh, oh my God. That's not a good look. That's not a good look.
Because it's not for me to say. Womanhood looks different for everybody.
What do you define a woman as?
An adult human female.
And what does a female mean?
Well,
how
that's
do you define a female?
someone with female reproductive organs.
Okay.
Someone who's, here's the thing, when you're female, it goes right down to your bones, your DNA. So that's why if someone dies,
Okay.
we could dig up their bones 100 years from now. We have no idea what they believed in their head, but we can tell what sex they were because it's ingrained in every fiber of their being.
Interesting. So I'm trying to understand. Your definition is that a woman is someone who is female, you said, right?
Correct,
Gotcha.
is
Okay.
a biological female.
So what happens if we have maybe someone who is female, identifies as a woman, right? Cisgender woman, right? As you just explained, but maybe doesn't have the ability to reproduce. Maybe doesn't have those organs that you're talking about that are reproductive organs.
I have answered the question. You stood up here and said trans women are women.
Yes.
Tell me what you mean. What is a woman?
Womanhood is something that, just as Ethan explained, I cannot define because I am not
But
myself.
you used the word, so what did you mean when you said trans women are women if you don't know what it means?
Right?
Yeah, so the thing is, if you can't define what a woman is, that means that a woman can be anything, right? Like that's essentially what this person is saying here. That a woman can be anything, and that if a woman can be anything, then that means that the term in and of itself is meaningless, right? It has no meaning, which in my opinion means that if the term has no meaning, you really shouldn't be offended by it if you happen to be misgendered, because what you're saying is that this stuff has no meaning at all. So if it has no meaning, then why are you so caught up on being misgendered or, preferred pronouns, right? If this stuff truly has no meaning to it, if you can't even define what it means, right? That's the issue.
So here's the thing. So I do not define what a woman is because I do not identify as a woman. Womanhood is something that is an umbrella term. It includes people
That describes what?
people who identify as a woman.
Identify as what?
As a woman.
What is that?
But what is a woman? What is it that you're trying to identify as? Like, what does it mean? Like, what defines a woman? What characteristics would put me in the category of being a woman, right?
That.
Was to each their own. Each woman, each man, each person is going to have a different relation with their own gender identity and define it differently.
That doesn't-
And so
I'm not
trans
asking for
women are women too.
Okay.
Wow.
And you want to
The audience is clapping for
you want
this.
to reduce.
What you
listen,
won't even
listen.
tell me
You
what the
want to
word
reduce,
means, though. So
you
that's
want to
the
reduce
problem.
women. You want to reduce men down to maybe just their genetics, our genitals,
No.
our chromosomes, right? That's what you're
What
saying.
you want to do is
that's what we
what
are
you
at the end of the day.
want to do is appropriate women. You want to appropriate womanhood.
Okay.
And turn it into basically a costume that can be worn.
I'm really
Yeah. So like I said, that is what I'm saying about Walsh, right? Walsh keep it 100, right? He keep it straight. Okay. So now we're gonna react to this clip of him discussing this subject with a professor, okay, with an academic. So let's get into it.
extreme approach that you are admittedly taking. And then there's also just ordinary people that might not be comfortable with the language change. And it just is awkward. And so they're afraid of not being courteous or being accepting. So there's like these two things. There's actually combating and not being, you don't like transgender, the idea of transgender. That's different than pronouns. But then just for most people, it's just feeling a little bit awkward and unsure and not wanting to hurt or offend somebody.
Well, why is it important for educators to teach about gender identity, gender presentation, and pronouns? Why do you think that's important?
It's not important, right? It's not important. A lot of these people are doing it just so they can have a job, right? That's just what it is. And we honestly shouldn't be funding this stuff from a taxpayer perspective, okay? We shouldn't be funding it. Right now, if it is funded by private sector, I have no issues with that whatsoever. Zero. But why should taxpayer dollars go into funding something that, in my opinion, doesn't really have a positive return on investment in regards to economic productivity, right? I'm so serious about that.
Because there is a difference. There is biological sex, and a lot of times people are conflating sex and gender. So there's biological sex, and then there's gender, and that's a social construct in the sense that just because you're born biologically a female doesn't mean you automatically want to vacuum, for instance, which is usually a feminine activity or conflated that way.
All right, so here's the thing about that. The problem with what she's saying is that that is what she's saying. However, what other people are saying, right, is that no. A trans woman is a woman, right? Which what they're saying is that no. They're the exact same as a biological woman, which is the argument that they use to justify trans women competing against biological women in sports. They say, no, they're the exact same thing, right? So people like her, they love to use this argument against conservatives to try to make conservatives seem ignorant on this topic, right? Oh, no, you're getting biological sex and gender mixed up, right? This is why when I have conversations about this stuff, I always keep it at sex, right? When I talk about certain policies, I say, no. We just have to go based off sex, right? Because that avoids the semantics game of getting into what gender versus sex is, right? Once you get in that conversation, honestly, you're not going to win that argument with the left because they've essentially have defined gender as a social construct, right? So if you get into that whole conversation with them, again, it's a semantics game. If you keep it at just no, you can have the gender thing. I don't care about that. I'm just talking about sex. We should orient society around sex. If you keep it at that, that is a debate that they cannot win, right? So, again, the problem with her argument here is that there are people that are trying to basically blur the lines between gender and sex and say, no. A trans woman is actually a woman. A trans man is actually a man, a biological man. That's what they're doing, okay?
And so it's this idea of giving children in age-appropriate ways an understanding that these things aren't set in stone. Gender identity is not tied to biology.
You say that gender...
But it is. Gender. Here's the thing. She also talked about, gender roles when it came to, just because, you're born a woman doesn't mean you have to vacuum. But that's not what people are debating here. Okay, that's not what people are debating. We're talking about certain aspects of our society that have a biological function to them. For example, which bathrooms you use, right? Nobody's saying that just because you're a woman, that means you have to vacuum. Obviously, there are some, things that we push women into from a certain perspective that, again, it's somewhat biological in nature, okay? For example, when it comes to motherhood, okay, and taking care of kids, women, just because of biology, they tend to be more nurturing, okay? Because of their hormones, they tend to, do better with kids, right? So yeah, that there are some things that we push women into that aren't necessarily just something that women can do. Men can take care of kids too, but women, just from a biological perspective, a hormonal perspective, are just better at that. They're more equipped to do that by nature, okay? But nobody's saying that just because you're a woman that you have to vacuum, or even that, you have to, stay at home all day and that you can't go to work and all this other stuff. I'm not going that far, right? Even though, I'm not necessarily down with the extreme feminism stuff. I'm just saying, I wouldn't go as far as to say that, no, women must be confined to roles that have nothing to do with biology, right? I'm not saying that. But we have to acknowledge that there are some gender roles that simply are there because it is a function of biology.
It's not set in stone.
It's not.
What do you mean?
I mean that's just factually incorrect, saying that. So you have biology is the chromosomal makeup and reproductive organs and all of that. And so that would be sort of the nature side of things. But the nurture side of things is where we see more of gender identities.
She began by saying that my view is extreme. Okay, so the view that every single person on Earth has held up until 15 seconds ago is extreme, and the view that almost everyone does right now still hold is extreme, apparently, according to her. But there is this they are conflating gender and sex, because on one hand they say, well, you got your biological sex, but then your gender is whatever social construct. But then they turn around and say that trans women are women.
Exactly.
So a man who identifies with the gender, the social construct of womanhood, actually is a woman. So if you can laugh all you want, but this is a logical problem. You are conflating sex and gender just by saying that.
Yeah, what they're really trying to do is that they're trying to blur the lines between the two. And they're trying to pretend like they're not, right? And when they pretend like they're not, they do it simply to try to smear conservatives as ignorant. You don't understand, right? You don't understand the difference between gender and sex. When it's like, no. You're clearly just trying to blur the lines, okay? Because they are referring to transgender women as female. But female is supposed to refer to a sex. That's what female is reserved for, biological sex. But again, they've even took that word that specifically refers to sex, and they have assigned that to transgender women that are not biologically women, right? So again, they play this semantics game to try to pretend like conservatives are ignorant, but they know exactly what they're trying to do.
So that's the problem.
There's biological sex, and then there is gender identity. Part of me wants to ask why you care so much, because it's really not that big of a deal.
Oh, yeah. Can I answer that?
And see, they always do this silly thing too. Why do you care so much? Why is it a big deal? Well, listen, I mean, in my opinion, do I think it's a big deal on an individual level? No, right? I don't care what anybody identifies as. I don't care if you do that. I don't really care. I think where it becomes an issue is when, again, it gets into women's sports, when it comes to the bathroom issue, when it comes to how we orient society, forcing people to, use pronouns and refer to people a certain way, even though it might not necessarily be aligned with their religious or personal beliefs. That's when it becomes a problem, right? This debate, honestly, would not even exist if it wasn't for this effort to force people to conform to something that people simply don't want to conform to, right? If, for example, if, transgender people, if they just use the bathroom that aligns with their biological sex, would never be an issue, right? Would never be an issue. Or put it this way, it coincides with their genitalia, would never be an issue, right? If they say, hey, listen, we're just going to participate in sports that align with our biological sex or with other transgender people, would never be an issue. If they say, hey, I don't care what pronouns you call me, these are my preferred pronouns, but I'm not going to say it's hate speech if you don't use it, it would not be an issue, right? Nobody would care. It's the fact that society is having to conform to all these things that makes it an issue. Otherwise, if they didn't have to do that, then it wouldn't be an issue, right? Nobody would be talking about this.
I'd love to answer that question. I care about the truth. So basic truth matters. I want to live in a society where people care about the truth and we're grounded in truth. Right. I care about children, and these insane ideas about gender are being foisted on kids, and that bothers me quite a bit. I care about the women who are having their opportunities stolen from them. I care quite a bit. Yeah.
You are a champion for.
I found that debate to be fascinating. Again, I couldn't wait to watch it. But yeah, I mean, as you can see there, there are people on both sides of the aisle here, and I don't think that they're really hearing each other, okay? Because I think that there's obviously, agenda, from one side of the aisle to just say, you know what, no. The term women is meaningless. If you want to be a woman, you're a woman. And if you identify one, then you must be treated as one, regardless of biology. And then there's another side that says, no, we can't do that. We have to conform to biology. And I just don't think that the two are really ever going to come to a reasonable conclusion in regards to how society should function, right? That is very evident from this conversation between this professor and Matt Walsh, because I don't think that the professor was actually hearing what Matt Walsh was saying. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.